A lot of farmers and many who voted for Donald Trump are now realizing that they are utterly screwed if Donald Trump goes forward with his tariff plan. But they probably should have realized that because back in 2018, Trump's tariffs, which were not as high as what he's threatening right now against Mexico, Canada, and China, those 2018 tariffs really hurt farmers as well. So was there this collective amnesia? Now, Donald Trump is saying that he's not paring back his tariff threats. There was a report out in the Washington Post that said it was all bluster and bravado. And Donald Trump says, no, I'm going forward with those tariffs. 25% in Mexico, 25% in Canada, additional tariffs against China, around the same amount of percent of tariffs in Europe. And as we know, tariffs are a tax on U.S. importers. It's a tax on U.S. that's passed through to consumers to disincentivize exports from abroad. It also hurts the country exporting from abroad because the importing company in the United States is less likely to go and do that if they're going to be taxed, and it disincentivizes the consumers to purchase that. So perhaps they try to look elsewhere. But you often are met with what's called retaliatory tariffs, where a country like China just says, you know what, don't buy soybeans, Chinese companies from America. Just don't buy it. We'll get it from Brazil instead. And that leaves all of this excess supply inside the United States. We live in a globalized world. China just goes to Brazil. Other countries go to Brazil and South American countries to get this stuff. And then America has to come in, try to subsidize the farmers. In other words, bail them out with taxpayer money to keep them afloat. That's what happened during the first Trump run of tariffs. And it's going to be worse now. So let's show you what these farmers are saying. Let's just go through this. So Donald Trump says the story in the Washington Post, quoting so-called anonymous sources which don't exist, incorrectly states that my tariff policy will be pared back. That is wrong. The Washington Post knows it's wrong. It's just another example of fake news. And then Donald Trump previously posted this. The tariffs and tariffs alone created this vast wealth for our country. Then we switched over to income tax. We were never so wealthy as during this period. Tariffs will pay off our debt and make America wealthy again. And it's a chart that shows when tariffs were being collected more frequently in the United States. And Trump seems to suggest that we were at our most powerful in the late 1700s through the 1890s. Imagine thinking that that's when America's economy was its best versus after World War II, or now when we were actually leading the world in GDP and growth. But that's why Trump's an incredibly dangerous person. Here, I want to pull up this article about farmers. Let's look at these farmers in Washington first. It's called Perfect Storm of Factors Hit Washington Apple Farmers, Driving Bankruptcies and Consolidation. It says a perfect storm of economic challenges is pushing Washington apple farmers out of business. It goes on to say that this trend of unsustainable losses, including a rising labor cost, stagnant prices paid to farmers, but also a dramatic apple oversupply caused by increased farm efficiency and the loss of major international markets due to then President Donald Trump's 2018 tariffs. Those converging conditions afflict farmers who produce Washington's most valuable crop, which supplies nearly 7 in 10 apples eaten in the United States and is worth about $2 billion a year. The article goes on to talk about how Trump's tariffs were very, very harmful because it shut down the international market. This is what it says. Historically, when oversupply threatened to drop the prices, the international export market served as a pressure release valve for Washington producers to unload any overabundance. But that all came to a crashing halt in 2018 when Trump announced tariffs on India and China. Tariffs are a tax applied to imports from other countries intended to encourage domestic production over imports. And while the move might have left U.S. steel producers in a better spot, which, by the way, it really didn't, the countries fired back with retaliatory tariffs that all but ended the apple exports from the farmers to two of Washington's biggest markets. In the end, the bigger loser is going to be the country or the producers in the country who are not able to allocate their product to an export destination. And it talks about how the supply just was high, but the exports dramatically fell, and they refer to it here as a vicious cycle that was instigated by Trump's tariffs, which were a big failure in 2018. This repeats itself over and over again as well. You take a look at this article here, how Donald Trump's tariffs have and could affect Illinois agriculture. And it goes on to talk about this guy, J.C. Reitmeyer, and he is the Champaign County senior Republican co-president. So he's a Republican guy, a Trumper guy. And he goes on to basically say that a lot of the big buyers of their crops have gone to South America and other countries to get their corn and soybeans, and we're kind of in the dust again. We're just going to have to get our exports built back up. A large share of the crops that are grown are sold to other countries, notably China, which is the largest buyer of U.S. soybeans and the third largest buyer of its corn. When the Trump administration imposed tariffs on Chinese goods in 2018, China retaliated with tariffs on U.S. crop exports, especially soybeans, and Chinese buyers then looked elsewhere and basically started propping up the Brazil market for soybeans. So Brazil was the biggest beneficiary of this. We know that China is building the BRICS bloc. Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and they're actively focusing on cultivating, no pun intended, relationships with, in North America, Mexico on the southern border, Central American countries, South American countries. So when Donald Trump is out there threatening all of these nations, saying we're going to conquer Panama and take over the Panama Canal, as part of its new Silk Road program, the Silk Road 2, China then goes to Panama and goes, hey, we'll help you out. What can we invest in? What can we do for you? And China established diplomatic relations with Panama when? 2017, when Trump was in office. Panama turned away from Taiwan, moved in favor of Beijing, a big blunder by Donald Trump. I did a video on the president of Honduras, Jimena Castro, and she said, Trump, you do deportations of Hondurans in America, bloody mass deportations. We are going to kick you out of American military bases here in Honduras. And how is Honduras so bold to say that? Well, their president, their leader, established diplomatic relations, you guessed it, with China, who's obviously also saying to them behind closed doors, or even not behind closed doors, we've got your back. America's no longer someone you can count on. We'll help you. At the G20 summit that was recently held a few months back after the election, the president of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum, she was not supposed to meet with Xi Jinping of China. Not only did she meet with President Xi Jinping of China, she was photographed with him sending a message intended. Trump's might be too stupid to see the message that was being sent, but I could see it, you could see it, saying, essentially, we'll go with them. If you want to disrespect us and attack our sovereignty, we'll start doing more deals with China as opposed to the United States. This is from The Guardian. Bleak outlook for U.S. farmers, and Trump's tariffs could make it worse. Bumper grain crop set to weigh heavily as farmers count costs of seed, fertilizers, and effects of a possible trade war. And this article also goes on to talk about how Mexico, Canada, and China are the three biggest importers of U.S. agricultural goods, and agriculture is among the U.S. biggest export engines. The U.S. Department of Agriculture estimates 16% of the U.S. corn harvest and 40% of soybeans are exported. A trade war between those three countries could have both short-term and long-term impacts. And it had a bad impact in 2018, and Trump's threatening to increase that over and over what it was in 2018. Now, finally, you saw the video I did earlier this week. I dropped the video on Monday morning where I showed you how all of these right-wing propaganda papers, for example, New York Post, and the writer was Charles Gasparino, he's saying, oh my God, I'm looking at these bond markets right now. There's about to be economic catastrophe. But he's saying that President Biden laid a trap for Donald Trump and put a fiscal time bomb to try to hurt Donald Trump. This is where MAGA is moving in their disingenuous approach. When Trump screws everything up, they're saying, oh, Biden set this trap. Biden did this. Biden did that. Look, under President Biden, we had record job growth. The stock market set records 55, 60% over what it was when Trump was in office. When Trump was in office, you couldn't even find toilet paper. Your 401k was up under President Biden. GDP growth consistently increased. There was never a month ever where jobs were lost when President Biden was in office. Unemployment was at record lows when President Biden was in office. Wages were up. He stood by union workers. You know, a lot to be proud about with that record. And 40,000 infrastructure projects, building from the bottom up, middle out, and no drama. Well, you're seeing already what Trump's going to cause. So now we're seeing the excuses start to get built up around it. What's so important that we do here at the MeidasTouch Network, which corporate media refuses to do though, is just break this down calmly with data. I show you the charts. We go through a lot of these statistics, and then you judge for yourself. So thanks for watching. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 4 million subscribers. We so appreciate your support, and have a wonderful day.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Midas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.